Okay, and what I want to do in this video is give you an introduction into the idea of what the economic concept of utility actually is. Okay, so obviously we're on economics. I don't even know why I still have that in there, but I do. Okay, so what is utility? And I will always probably start a lot of these videos by saying it's always a good idea to know what you're talking about before you talk about something. So the definition of utility is it's the satisfaction or it's the happiness that you get from consuming goods and services over a particular day or a week or a month or whatever. So if you consume a cup of coffee, how much happiness do you get from that coffee? That's what utility is, okay? It is genuine happiness. Now, the thing about utility is that we measure it in imaginary units called utils. Okay, so if you have two chocolate bars, you have, let's say, a Kinder and, I don't know, a Mars bar. Okay, you prefer the Kinder bar. The Kinder bar is going to give you more utils of happiness than eating the Mars bar. They both might make you happier, but what we're saying is what we're stating now is that we can accurately measure, which we cannot in any way, shape or form, but we're pretending we can accurately measure the exact amount of happiness that you get from consuming one good over the other. So you could say, well, a Kinder Bueno gives me 10 utils of happiness, whereas a Mars bar gives me 7 utils of happiness. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, at least at the moment. Remember, those numbers those numbers I've just made up off the top of my head. They have no meaning in reality whatsoever, but they will change, and we'll talk about why they will change in later videos. Okay, so what's total utility? Well, total utility is the entire satisfaction or happiness that a consumer receives from consuming a number of goods and services. So if you go through a day and you add up all the happiness that you got from each good and service that you have consumed that day, and remember they're measured in utils, the total happiness or total utility for that day is just the addition of all of the utils derived from consuming each of those goods and services that you have done that day. And I say a day, it could be a day, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, whatever, it's irrelevant, okay? But that's what total utility is, the total happiness that you get from consuming all goods and services that you have consumed over a certain period of time. Now, what really, the main thing about economics is economists think at the margin, okay? And what that means is they say, okay, how much extra either happiness in this case or benefit or whatever will I get from doing this versus what is the extra cost of doing this action, okay? More on that way later. But what is marginal utility? Well, the reason I've put in Ricky Gervais extras here is because this word extra is really important. Marginal utility is the extra satisfaction, the extra happiness, the extra utils a consumer gains from consuming only one extra unit of a good, the next unit of the same good. Okay, that's what that is. So it's how much extra happiness do you get from consuming one extra unit of a good. Now, I am currently recording this video in Mongolia and absolutely loving my experience here, I have to say. And the reason why I mention that is because there are no McDonald's in Mongolia. So a very enterprising person would be the person that would try to bring McDonald's to Mongolia, because I'm sure you can make a huge amount of money. But still, I'm going to use an example of my own Big Mac consumption. Okay, so there's me, Jonathan Trainer. Okay, Big Mac consumption. Okay, so what I'm saying to you here is these are the quantities here, and this is the total happiness that I get. And what I'm trying to do is to show you how marginal utility is calculated. So what I'm saying to you, obviously if I've consumed nothing, I have zero total utility. Okay, so we're saying I've consumed no Big Macs, or well, actually nothing, but we're just talking about Big Macs, and I've consumed none, so therefore I have no total utility. As I consume my first Big Mac, so that's, I've gone from 0 to 1, so there's one extra. My total utility goes from 0 to 10. The extra happiness that first Big Mac gave me is actually 10 utils. Now, most people would be satisfied with that. I'm a bit of a big boy. I like to eat a good bit of food, unfortunately, so I'm going to try and have another Big Mac. So after my second, so I've gone from 1 to 2, my total utility went up to 15. My total utility includes the amount of happiness I got from the first Big Mac and the amount of extra happiness that I got from the second. So extra happiness for the first, extra happiness for the second. And therefore, my total utility is now 15. Well, what is the marginal utility that I derived from consuming my second Big Mac? Well, it's 15 minus 10, which is 5. Okay, so if the total utility that I have after consuming 2 Big Macs is 15, and the total utility I had after consuming my first Big Mac is 10, well, the second Big Mac must have given me 5 extra utils of happiness. So the idea here is that it's just simply the second number minus the first, the second total utility minus the first, and that's how you can work out marginal utility. Now, a very important point, which we will come to later on, but I want to bring this up now, is why did the marginal utility fall? And I want you to think about it, and I'm sure it's obvious, okay? The reason that it fell was I was hungry, I had 1 Big Mac. It satisfied me a lot. I wasn't as hungry after the first Big Mac, and I had a second one. So it's not going to give me that much happiness, simply because it's not satisfying me the same way the first one did. Also, I've already eaten a Big Mac, so now it's just like, oh, another one, okay, whatever. And then we go on to the third Big Mac. So after 3 Big Macs, my total utility is 17. But after 2 Big Macs, it was 15. So what's the marginal utility of the third Big Mac? Don't say 3 Big Macs, because that's not correct. It's the third. It's the one extra. It's the extra happiness you get from consuming 1 extra unit of a good. And the marginal utility is 17 minus 15, which is 2. Now, I'm not going to go through them all because I don't want to waste your time and make the video incredibly boring. But what do we see here is that the marginal utility is falling, falling, falling. And there's a few reasons for this. Okay, the first one is that I'm obviously getting fuller and fuller and fuller. And the second thing is that I'm getting bored in some way of consuming the same good. Think about a song that you loved, absolutely loved, and then what did you do? You played it over and over again, and most likely you played it until you became sick of it, and a new song came along and you maybe loved that one, and the process began again. Now, this, don't forget, is all in one sitting. This wouldn't apply if it's called the law of diminishing marginal utility. We're going to look at it again in a later video, so don't be afraid of the name. Just see that it's obvious that the extra happiness you get from consecutively consuming the same good would fall. And it's obvious because I'm getting fuller and fuller and fuller. Now, what happens here is the fifth one gives me no extra happiness. And what that means is I would be indifferent eating that 5th Big Mac at a price of 0. I wouldn't pay money for it, but I would be indifferent whether or not I ate it at a price of 0. And see the way this one actually takes away from my happiness. So that means that you would have to pay me money to eat that. Okay, so obviously, I mean, I've never had 6 in a row, but I'll give it a try one day. But this is what we're talking about here. You would have to pay me money to eat that because that is causing me displeasure. The extra happiness is a minus. The marginal utility is negative. Okay, now what I would like you to do is to pause the video here in a second and have an attempt at drawing 2 separate graphs. The first graph, all based on this one bit of this one table of numbers here. The first graph is the graph of total utility. So what I want you to do is on the y-axis, I want you for the first question to put total utility. It's going to be utility anyway, but total utility. And on the x-axis, the one going across the screen, I want you to put the numbers, the quantity, so 0 to 6. And then for the second question, on the y-axis, which is the one going up and down, I want you to put marginal utility, and on the x-axis, I want you to put the quantity. So pause the video now and then see if you can draw those 2 graphs. And once you reckon you have an answer of some description, then press play. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's a fair enough point. Just watch the answer and then go back to this point in the video and see if you can do it yourself. Okay, well, I hope you had a chance to do that, all right? And don't be afraid of making mistakes. It's the most important thing to be making mistakes because you learn best from those mistakes. So I haven't put 0 here, so I've started off at 1, so just to kind of bring that to your attention. And the first one I think was 15. And we go, what I want you to see here, this is the total utility, of course. What I want you to see here is that for up to 4 Big Macs, yes, the total utility is increasing, but the rate at which it is increasing is slowing down. it goes constant here. It doesn't have to. It could just go straight down, but then eventually it will start to come down. And the reason that it's coming down from here to here, from 5 to 6, don't forget the 6th Big Mac gave me negative marginal utility, and that's what's pulling down the total utility in that one. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, just to kind of show you, you would have had to do this, have done this anyway, but this is the calculation of the marginal utility based on these numbers. I'm not going to go through them again because I don't want the video to get crazy long, which is probably too long already. And again, this is starting off at 1. This is 0 here, and this is -4. So if we kind of put the graph on, what do we see about marginal utility? It's constantly falling. Why is it falling? The reason that it's falling is because the law of diminishing marginal utility. As you consecutively consume extra units of the exact same good, the extra happiness you get falls. And I really hope that makes sense.